front of fellow passengers. A passenger on the CityJet plane contacted a French radio station last Wednesday and claimed the movie star had also urinated on the aisle. The traveller claimed Mr. Depardieu stood up minutes before takeoff and declared in a loud voice, "Je veux pisser, je veux pisser." And, judging by the size of him, when this man says he wants to take a piss, it's always wise to listen.
Ridley Scott is currently working on a project dubbed Prometheus, which may or may not be a prequel to Alien, depending on what mood he's in when he gives his interviews. Apparently next up for him is a reboot of Blade Runner. Given that the original is the most overhyped movie of all time, expect much guff and hot air to be vented in the coming months.
Keira Knightley is proposing starring in a Romeo and Juliet spin-off, following the story of Rosalind, the woman Romeo is in love with before his lecherous eyes spied poor Juliet. Not big fans of period drama here at Passive Aggressive Film Reviews. We just want Keira to go away really, really soon. Okay folks, this is the part of the show where we discuss a movie on current release, and this week we're going to talk about The Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Brief overview: Oscar nominee James Franco plays Will Rodman, a scientist working with chimpanzees hoping to find a cure for Alzheimer's disease. He's got a vested interest in the project, and his pianist father Charles, played by the always excellent John Lithgow, suffers from the condition himself. When a failed demonstration of the efficacy of the research results in funding being pulled, the head of the project orders the chimps be put down. Secretly, Rodman takes a baby chimp home, names him Caesar, and marvels as the youngster displays remarkable intelligence, developing IQ-wise far more swiftly than even a human child would. That's all I'm going to say about the plot, because I don't want to reveal too much more. I thought that in terms of the special effects, this was about as good as we have ever seen. What do you reckon, Nathaniel?
Couldn't disagree with that. Absolutely seamless.
Yeah?
Absolutely seamless. Do you want to expand on it a bit more? I'll tell you my thoughts on the movie afterwards.
Okay, well, I mean, what made this special? Of course, we've seen plenty of movies with great special effects, even movies that aren't particularly good. You know, we were talking about Captain America last week, and whilst the film wasn't particularly good, the special effects were great. What set this apart, I felt, was the photorealistic nature of the chimpanzees dropped into a real-life situation. See, it's not like, you know, a Star Trek or an Avatar where the visuals are stunning, but they're alien, they're different. This is remarkable special effects technology being used in a situation that we can all relate to. Just everyday streets and houses. It was jaw-dropping.
This is the work of our man Andy Serkis again, isn't it, Richard?
It is Andy Serkis, and for those that don't know who he is, he's an actor. He does normal acting roles, but he's cut a bit of a niche for himself doing something called motion capture. This is where it's green screen work, and he has a bunch of sensors attached to him all over his body, and computers register his facial expressions, his body positioning, his posture, and all of that is used to create realistic, lifelike characters. Famously, he was Gollum in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He was also another monkey. Another ape. He was the King Kong in Peter Jackson's remake of that particular movie. So he's become the go-to guy for this kind of stuff. And his performance as Caesar was just unbelievable how effective it was.
Absolutely agree. The character Caesar, how could anyone not endear themselves to Caesar? Anyone who's not even heard of Planet of the Apes could go and watch that film and instantly relate and become emotionally involved with their character Caesar. I think Andy Serkis has a huge part to play in that. I'm not a great advocate of huge amounts of money being special effects. I'm very much the old-fashioned type who likes a good story, Richard, as you know.
Absolutely.
I cannot find a flaw in this advancement in movie technology. He brings the character to a different level, a different dimension, and he can only recommend it for that.
Nathaniel, I agree with every word you're saying. I find that a bit disturbing, but I totally agree with you. The characterisation of Caesar was so remarkable. I would say within a couple of minutes of him becoming, the adolescent version of him rather than the little tiny baby version, you quickly forgot that this was a special effect that you were watching. It was just another character in the film. And I don't think that's ever been done before. Even Gollum, you always knew you were looking at as special effects.
Yes, that's very true, absolutely. It's another advancement, isn't it? Didn't think it was possible after Gollum, to be honest with you, but it's just incredible.
Well, I mean, every time an advancement is made, you do just have to step back and admire it. As with you, Nathaniel, I do find it troubling when movies are just special effects extravaganzas. I quickly find those dull.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's used appropriately and in the correct context, I think it's fantastic. Now that's not to say that I thought the movie was perfect. Far from it. And I think that the actual plot ties in reasonably nicely with the writing that was actually occurring last week. Except the ones writing in the movie, the monkeys, were more intelligent than the people writing on the streets.
There you go. I was waiting for the Shittlebob slant to make its head shown, and there it is. I have to say, Richard, I'm quite surprised that you enjoyed the film. I didn't think it would be your cup of tea at all.
I enjoyed the spectacle, if not the message.
Okay, I understand that.
The apes in the cages were meant to invoke sympathy, but instead, due to their belligerent attitude towards their human masters, they only served to make themselves look foolish.
Make themselves look foolish, but how did they do that, Richard?
Just by being awkward, non-cooperative.
Well,
just pains in the backside.
They probably had many pains in the backside the way they've been treated, Richard. So you've got no... What's your problem with the moral of the story?
I didn't like the message that through revolution, evolution can begin.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a poor message.
I don't see why you think that would be a poor message, but carry on.
Well, especially in light of what we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
We'll come to that, Richard. Hold your horses. We'll come to that. The point being, you're saying that revolution... No, I'm doing it myself now. If we can get back to the moral of the story, Richard. In essence, it's a very sophisticated, incredibly well-made version of a classic. In so much that animals are being tested, yes, to find a cure for Alzheimer's disease, which is obviously something that we all want, but to do so on monkeys and apes is absolutely abhorrent. And to see them react in the way that they do is not only understandable, it's justifiable and good to see. And to see them displaying intelligence. They showed the kind of intelligence, Richard, which I think Wyatt really kind of made a point of. They showed such intelligence that...
Do you want to explain who Wyatt is?
He's the director.
Thank you.
And he made it especially poignant that at the height of their upheaval, at the height of their revolution, at this disgusting torture they were being subjected to, they didn't massacre humans, they didn't rip them apart limb from limb, which would have been justifiable in many eyes. Instead, they just simply rendered them unconscious. They wanted to stop the torture. They didn't want to kill the humans that were doing it. And I thought that was, well, emotive to say the least.
This is absolutely typical of you.
It is.
You have to take the moral, liberal, wishy-washy, left-wing point of view in absolutely everything, don't you? Can't you peel the scales from your eyes just for once?
No, I can't. Nor do I want to, Richard.
You're suggesting that it is somehow immoral to experiment and test on animals.
I'm not suggesting it, Shittlebob, I'm telling you.
And yet you would, if you had some kind of malady that required medication, you'd be the first one to gobble it down.
Not if I know it had been tested on a creature that had to suffer.
So before you take any pill, you research it, do you? Or do you just think, I've got a bad back, I'm in a bit of pain, I'm going to take some paracetamol, and be damned with where they came from?
Well, I'm not a mainstream boost medication kind of guy, Richard, as you know. I'm kind of into your herbal therapies. I try and avoid that avenue as much as possible. I don't avoid it all the time, but I do pop the occasional paracetamol, maybe the occasional aspirin. But I think we're past the limits of testing those on monkeys and rabbits, aren't we?
But they were tested originally, so if your principles have any value, you wouldn't consume those.
I disagree with you. I don't agree that they were tested.
This is that is just a preposterous thing to say. During the development of those drugs, doubtless they were tested on animals. Doubtless.
I think you're very doubtful, Richard, and I think you're hiding it up with your expression, the expression in your voice. I don't think you know that they were tested, in much the same way as I don't know if the truth's known. So maybe I'm papering over the facts a little here, but I've always surmised that products such as aspirin and paracetamol would not be tested on any creatures.
But so instead of taking real medicine, what you would instead take would be some kind of homeopathic, non-existent, swallow a couple of magic beans and hope you get better. Is that right?
Yes. All God's creations, Richard, and he creates the remedies for our ailments right here on the earth. So why don't we use them? Surely Jesus would approve of that.
Jesus would approve of nothing that comes out of your poisoned mouth. So let's get back onto the movie, because you're making me incredibly annoyed.
Wandered off a little, haven't we?
Now then, there's some suggestions that the original movie was racist.
That's correct.
There's nothing racist about humans being portrayed as superior to monkeys.
Interesting argument, Richard. It's certainly a deplorable term, whatever that term might be.
Chimpanzees are not a race. They're not black. They're not white. They're not Chinese. They're chimpanzees.
So what label would you give it? Special?
They're animals.
They're animals, all God's creations, Richard.
They're animals.
No, Jesus created them all. Didn't he?
Jesus did. God created life, Nathaniel. Get your facts right.
We're not going to go into a Christian argument here. We're talking about the film, but go on.
I've got nothing to go on for. You made a statement that was incorrect.